Look at this beauty. I've very much been looking forward to working on this one. This is a international watch company, IWC, Schaffhausen pocket watch. This came from an auction from a Florida family, and they'd moved to Florida from Boston in the early 1960s. And it was another Bostonian, Florentine Jones, as a young 27-year-old man and watchmaker who decided he would relocate from Boston to Switzerland, where watchmaking skills were very high and labour was relatively cheap. Just look at the finishing on this case. All solid 14 karat gold. And so he ended up in Schaffhausen, and he wanted to build the finest watches that he could then send back and sell in America. Well, things didn't quite work out the way he wanted, but with some eventual help from the locals, he was able to form IWC in 1868. And they're one of the top watch companies still in existence today. IWCs are often found on the wrists of famous musicians and actors, and no Top Gun pilot would be seen without one. An IWC pilot watch. Let's take a look inside, see what we can find. I see a small opening here for the case. So we'll get our case knife in. Oh, look at that. Gilt movement. And we actually had a dust cover there as well. It's an IWC case. And we can see the 14 karat gold hallmarks here too. And a few watchmaker marks. Let's take a look around the movement and see what we can find. This was sold to me as not working. And I'm not sure what the problems are, but when I try to wind the watch, it just was springing back. Do you see that? It's not holding, the ratchet's not holding. I think I see what the problem is. Can you just see here, this spring? It should be on the other side of that ratchet. Well, I think we can make that change pretty quickly. See what that does for us. I'm thinking with my tweezers here, I should be able to get this the other side of that click. Yeah. Let's try that. Ah, that's working. That's a good sign, at least for the mainspring and the ratchet. But our watch is not firing up, so I think we have some other issues here to investigate. For sure, this balance staff is broken. Looking up that serial number in one of these online databases gives us a date of 1923 and a caliber 73. found what looks to be a service date here in the case. 11/2/1939. This is interesting. We've got the Swiss hallmarks on the 14 karat gold case, but in Switzerland that was rated at 0.583. And we can see this case has been modified with the 2 squirrel marks. You see that to the left and the right? What was happening was the Germans were confiscating the Swiss gold because they rated 14 carats at 0.585. So the Swiss had to make that change. This is 0.585 14 karat gold. The case serial number looks to be a matching part, which is excellent. 1923, 1924. I think before we go any further, I just want to check to see if pulling the crown out allows us to move these hands. Okay. So the hand setting function is working. That is some good news. Well, let's get this decased. We'll start by undoing the setting screw, and we can pull the crown and stem out. I'm noticing an issue here. Do you see this? This case screw is sheared off. Well, we'll undo this side, but we'll need to find a way to get that broken screw out. And there's another issue here as well. There's a spring here for the regulator is broken. It does come out forwards. Look at the amazing patina on this dial. Most watchmakers would advise not to try and clean these dials, but just leave them as is. You can easily cause more damage than it's worth. But we'll take a look under the microscope later on and see if we can do a little bit. I'm concerned about those markings at number 9. Actually, they look almost like a residue. There's another issue here as well with this stem of the second hand. Somebody's been using glue here to fix this, and I can see here under the microscope that it's been squished. I'll get that taken care of later. I'll put these away for now. And I'll undo these additional case screws that are holding our movement in place, along with the spacer ring that has that damaged screw thread in it, so we should be able to remove that ring. And this looks like a press fit dial here, spring loaded. So we'll just run the case opener around, and here it is, our dial. I'll keep that in the dial box for safekeeping as well. And here we can see the springs that are holding the dial feet in place. I'm concerned about where this second hand is protruding. Looking at these jewels, and look at the dirt in here. We can recover that. Smooth the dial washer and the hour wheel out. Ooh, that's a bit gungy as well. Just old grease. Then our cannon pinion remover. Love this tool. It's vintage, but it does a brilliant job at removing these friction fit cannon pinions. Now we have this cover plate here for the rest of the motion works. This will give me access to the minute wheel on the right. and then a setting wheel or intermediate wheel that's right underneath the plate there. I love the robust design of this movement. IWC's motto since 1903. It also stamped on the other side of this movement, Probus Schaffhausen, good solid Schaffhausen craftsmanship. Definitely shows through. And on to our keyless works. I just adjusted the setting lever there to take some tension off of this spring. These spring bars are very robust. Maybe I can pull it out from this end, maybe not. Let's try the other end. Ah, that's got it. Yeah, there was a pin at the end there. Okay, well we have another spring here, which is acting as the yoke on our sliding clutch, and that's really a strong spring. Let's get our winding pinion gear out first, and then that releases the tension and we should be able to pull out our sliding clutch. That's a very simple but unusual design, to have the spring and the yoke together as one. I might use my steel tweezers for this. Yep, that's got it. Okay, well we had some wind on our watch when we were experimenting earlier, so I just want to open up the clicker here and let that wind out before we work on this side. We'll start with this balance complete, and even though it's got this broken regulator here, it's nice to see the wonderful finishing again, the polishing. See that on the regulator arm and the micrometer adjustment. I'm going to release this spring for our click, and then we can get the click out with these two screws. Again, lovely polishing here from IWC, even on the click spring as well. Almost a mirror glaze finish to this. Oop. Yes, springs have a habit of pinging away, so be careful. Alright, I'm going to do this in a certain order so it will help me diagnose, I hope, the fault with the train of wheels. So I want to just make sure that we release the pallet fork first. So we'll remove the pallet fork bridge. Wow, even the pallet fork is polished. And so that removes any locking of the escapement. We should be able to turn this and move our train of wheels. Something is jamming and or gumming up that whole train of wheels. So I'll work from this side, which is the mainspring ratchet wheel. And we'll kind of head downstream from here. I'll get the ratchet wheel removed and also the crown wheel. And we'll just continue to check our train and see if we can find out what the issue is here. Now, I'm expecting something a little bit unusual when we remove our mainspring barrel bridge. No, still jammed. Nothing to do with the train of wheels in the sense of that it's jamming up there, just something unusual about this movement under the barrel bridge and on top of our mainspring barrel. I'm excited to see it. Okay, here's the reveal. And there it is, the Maltese cross. Do you see that right there? This is a governor for our mainspring, and it stops the mainspring being overwound, or underwound in fact, so we get much more consistency through the operating range of the mainspring. Okay, now we just have our wheels, and look, it's still jammed. I've never seen anything like that before, unless there's a part jamming it, or I guess it could be completely gummed up, but let's just keep working. We'll take the center wheel bridge out, and that center wheel bridge is also supporting the third wheel as well. And look, the wheels are sticking to the jewels. Yeah, that's not right. The center wheel should have just dropped out. Oh, even our fourth wheel and escape wheel on their own are gummy. I'm starting to come to the conclusion that this is just old oil, old grease that's gummed up the whole train of wheels here. It's going to need a special cleaning and maybe burnishing of our pivots as well, but we will inspect them all just to make sure that we're not missing anything here. But my theory at this moment is when it was last serviced, possibly pre-World War II, 1939, and those oils seem heavy and greasy. Well, one last part to remove here. That's our setting lever. Oh look, and even that didn't drop down from underneath, so that's gummed up too. There we are. And that's it. Here's our base plate, ready for inspection. We'll take a brief look around and check those jewels. And you can see all that gummy grease there. And I use my pegwood to try and clear them a little bit. Is that really cracking there in the jewel? I don't think so. Yeah, just all old grease and gunge. Heat is up to temperature. I'm going to use both cleaners. We'll just run it, I think, for about 5 minutes with the cleaning solution, and then another 5 minutes for a rinse. And this is just a break of any grime before we put it through the L&R cleaner. The difference between new technology and old. I must admit, I prefer the quietness of this old L&R cleaner. But that ultrasonic does really get these plates quite clean. So we'll get our first basket ready to go, no particular order. swish it into the cleaning solution first of all. While everything's getting cleaned, I want to take a look at this balance. We've got this broken part here on the regulator. There should be a spring against that arm. We'll need to replace it. And then to disassemble this, I need to just take the stud out from underneath these two screws here. That should allow us to get the hairspring out. Get this whole thing into two parts. Just going to slide that out. What is that? Well, we have a broken balance staff. I think we knew that. But there's something else going on with that we'll need to take a closer look at, but we'll get this all separated. This is this spring return that goes against the regulator. That's sheared off. Let's take a look at our mainspring as well. This has this Maltese cross or Geneva drive function, so we actually have tension on the mainspring. This Geneva drive was a very simple and clever solution to a problem facing watchmakers many hundreds of years ago. And the issue is that these old style springs didn't give us consistent torque throughout their release. And what happened was, if we think of a typical spring, we might have something like 6 winds available on it, let's say. And the torque release was different along these winds. So with the first wind of release, let's start at this end here, our torque would be quite extreme on the spring. And then as it went through its release, it would be something like this. And what the Geneva drive does is it eliminates these tail ends where the torque is not very consistent. So it uses this area in the center here. It doesn't allow the watch or movement to make use of this part of the spring. Eventually these springs were superseded with newer alloys and different shapes, and if you remove a modern day spring from your watch, you'll find it has more of an S shape like that. And that compensates somewhat for these issues here. But this was the solution back in the day, the Geneva drive or Maltese cross. So on our mainspring here, we have about 1 wind already on it, and then you can see that we're stopped against that shape there. Do you see it? The other 4 or 5 slots are open, but it's stopping us using that last remaining wind of the watch. Now I'm just holding the tension back while we take the Maltese cross off, and then I can gradually let that last remaining wind out. Clever. Okay. Well, time to open our barrel and see what condition the spring is in. I would expect that these devices, the Geneva drive, would actually protect the spring as well and increase its longevity. We'll just remove the arbor. Everything looks okay. I'm not seeing any damage to the mainspring, but we'll take it out carefully. Oh, that wasn't quite what I expected. Okay, now we can see we have an old style spring here, but it looks in reasonable shape. We can give that a clean up and I think make use of it. So back to our balance, I'm going to remove the cap jewel. We have a hole jewel, and then on the other side of this, the cap jewel. Interestingly, these screws have been polished on the other side as well. Swiss tradition. I don't think our hole jewel comes out. No, it just slides away. I'm going to remove this hairspring from this balance wheel and take a closer look at it. And also this roller table here. There's something I'm not liking about that. But we'll get the hairspring out of the way first. This is a very delicate part. We'll just work this up off the balance staff. And then take a look at this. What is that? It's shellac. And here I can see a crack right through our roller table. We've got some issues here to deal with. Well, this is an original balance wheel with matching numbers. I think that helps me make a decision that we should try and rescue this if we can, but all that shellac has been put here by a previous watchmaker to solve some kind of issue. And it's like a toffee. Yeah, that is cracked, well and truly cracked. It's a write-off. I'm getting worried about our balance wheel here as well, the more I look at it, but we'll get this balance staff out first. But do you see here that there are some weights missing? And this has been shaved down as well on the inside. A lot of work has been done to this balance wheel, possibly to rebalance it because of all this extra weight here with the shellac. I'm guessing. Even my pegwood is struggling with that. But let's get our staking set opened up and see if we can find some stakes here that will help us remove the balance staff. You should do. I just want to fit this top one over the top of the staff and then give it a quick tap, and hopefully we can remove it from the balance wheel. Okay. Ah, yeah, that came away straight out. I'm going to look at this case, and in particular the crystal. This has been glued in, and some of the glue is failing around the edge. Do you see that? Look, it's coming away. And this is an acrylic crystal, non-original, and all of these glue remains are stuck inside the bezel here. And I'm going to clean this out with some pegwood. Unfortunately, it's gotten onto my dial as well. Look at this. I have to be ultra careful here. I don't want to remove any of the, well, I think it's a hand-painted dial, so I'm concerned the paint will come up if I don't do this very gently. I'm pretty sure this glue has come from too much exuberance with getting that bezel and crystal glued in. I'll keep working at it. It's coming up slowly. I've just formed a sort of a chisel shape here with the pegwood, but it's also on the subdial where the seconds And this is a different kind of glue. It's almost brittle. All of our parts are out of the cleaner. Let's take stock of where things stand. We've got quite a list to work through here. This spacer ring here had this broken screw, you might remember. So we're missing a screw, but the challenge is getting that out. We have a broken regulator return spring here. That's going to need to be replaced. This balance staff we knew was broken, at both ends in fact, and that's been ordered. I'm waiting on that to be delivered from France. But also, this roller table we found was cracked as part of the balance as well. So I'll need to find a replacement for this. The balance wheel we know was heavily shellacked together with this roller table, but more than that, we found that we're missing some weights on the outside, and it's had quite a bit of manipulation with some timing washers as well, so hopefully we can reuse it, but we may have to replace. All of these wheels were heavily gummed up in the jewels, so they're going to require additional cleaning, I think, and also the jewels too. The click spring was oddly misplaced. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but we found that at the beginning. We had some rusting on these hands, which we've cleaned up with some fibre, but we discovered here that this second hand is cinched closed. That probably explains why it was glued. We'll see if we can open this back up, hopefully. This acrylic crystal was glued in place into the bezel, and it was a couple of sizes too small. The crystal itself is in good shape, but I think we'll need to replace this. And I'll see if I can find a glass replacement that will fit within this bezel. And that bezel had a ton of glue, which I think I've been able to remove, but the case itself, we need to look at the alignment of the hinges. It's not quite snapping shut, so I'll do a little bit of work on this case. We've already worked on this beautiful patina dial here. We had some glue residue as a result of that crystal being overglued here, but also we had glue here, and I've been able to remove all of that. I think that's just about it. We'll get some parts ordered and we're ready for our rebuild. Inspecting our wheels. They look in decent shape. I'm going to have to work on those pivot ends though with my pivot polisher. We'll use a Jayco lathe to help us refinish these pivots by hand. I've just mounted the first wheel up here, and I'm going to use this burnishing bar here just to clean up these pivots, and we'll do this on all of the wheels. So let's start our rebuild process. I've got the base plate mounted, and I'm going to start with the escape wheel, and I want to build the train of wheels first to make sure that this all runs freely, because this was one of the main issues we had with the watch. So I want to be sure that mechanically this is all sound. So we'll check each wheel as we go along before we tighten down each of the fingers. This is a finger bridge movement So our fourth wheel going in, and this is the one that supports the second hand. I just want to check this pair works well together. The best way to do this is with an air blower. My air blower test. That's good. So let's put in the third wheel. And also the center wheel. And then we have one long finger bridge here, the witch's finger. And that's supporting both of those two wheels. It's nice to see the center wheel jeweled here. Just a sign of a higher quality watch. Quick test with the air blower. And they're all running smoothly, so I think we can tighten this down. One more check. I'm happy with that. Let's get our mainspring returned to the barrel. I've already put it into our winder. I'll give this just a little bit of D5 and get the cap returned. And we'll need to rebuild that Geneva drive. I won't get access to this later, so I'm just putting a little D5 oil here, and we'll also use a grease for our drive. So this was set with about 3/4 of a turn for the spring load. So I'll get that set up first. We'll get this screwed down in place, and then I'll tension up the spring and then drop the hook part down into the drive. So that's the trick, if we can do it. Oh, no, okay. I'll have to focus on this. So I'm just turning 3/4 down to the drive, and then I'm going to push it in. Apologies for the camera work here. There we go, we've got it. Alright, so that's preloaded with 3/4 or so of spring tension. And before we go any further, I want to get this setting lever back in place. I won't be able to do this after this bridge plate goes on, so we'll put our mainspring barrel back. That's good. I'm noticing I'll need to do a little bit of spot cleaning on this bridge plate. I missed that earlier, but we'll get that taken care of. For now, we can get this bridge plate secured in place. And I just want to give a test of these wheels here. We'll use the air blower. That's good. Put a little grease onto the shoulders of this click spring before we return this. And then remember to get our click spring on the right side. These shined up beautifully. I'll just rest it on top for now while we secure it. It doesn't work too well to try and do that under tension, so we'll just put a little grease here first, and then I can put the spring over the back side of the click. Turning our attention now to the dial side here, I can start rebuilding that. The setting lever is already in place, we needed that before we return the bridge plate, but we can put in our yoke and our sliding clutch and winding pinion. That yoke is already spring-loaded. And I'll just return our crown and stem as well. And then this is a return spring for the setting lever. Just clean that up a little bit. Okay, so that's the keyless works done. And then we have an intermediate wheel here that crosses to the minute wheel and hour wheel, so we'll put those back. And there's a little plate here that just secures these two. Actually, I won't do the hour wheel till the end. I'll just stay with these for now, and we'll go back to the other side and just check everything runs smoothly. And we can put back our pallet fork. And the pallet fork bridge. And now this will lock the escapement. We'll be able to put a little bit of wind onto the watch. And just check that the pallet fork holds back the tension. And then once this is done, we need to work on rebuilding our balance. And those are going to come from some parts that we've ordered. And I'm expecting those shortly. Okay, tension is good, it's ready to go. Just a quick test. Yeah, there's a nice click backwards and forwards. Our donor movement came in, but what's this? I don't like the look of this. These darker brown hands here are always something to check, especially between the kind of the 1920s and 1960s era. And the issue is radium. So let's just do a check here with our Geiger counter. Background radiation is usually between 0.1 and 0.2 microsieverts per hour, so you can expect a little bit, but let's just check our hands here. Look at this. Wow, 20 to 30 times our background radiation. It's 3 microsieverts per hour. Well, time to get these hands safely off our movement and put away. We don't want to be ingesting or inhaling any dust from these radium hands. Sometimes you'll see these on the dial as well, a darker brown on the numerals. We'll get these put away in a box, stacked with the rest of my radium goodies. And just check our dial, make sure there's nothing else coming off of this movement that's above background radiation, and also any of the tools that we've used as well. Just belt and braces, and we're safe now. We can continue with pulling the parts we need off of this movement. So we'll need the balance out, and also this movement holder screw here was broken, so we'll recover that as well. And this balance has the spring that we need here. You can see the full length of that now for the regulator. And we should have a good balance staff as well. With our new balance staff here, we've been able to rebuild the complete balance and ready for the big moment. Can we get our watch movement alive again? Just carefully position this balance cog into its seated position. Is it going to go? Oh yes, look at that. That's so nice to see. sticking away very well. Well, let's get this secured down. And I think before we test it in the Timegrapher, I just want to oil the jewels. We'll do this both sides of the movement. Alright, ready to test. I'm just looking for a starting point here and see what we have. Well, we're running a little bit slow, about 1 minute a day slow. Great amplitude, and our beat error is perfect. Well, less than 1 millisecond, which is what we're looking for. But we'll take care of that rate adjustment, not by moving the regulator for now, but by closing these pins just down slightly. That makes the effective length of this hairspring shorter and makes the watch go faster. I still want to see a little bit of a heartbeat between these two regulator pins, and then we'll make any fine adjustments by moving the regulator arm. So let's try this again. I'll set the lift angle for the IWC at 42. And what do we have? Oh, look at that. So I'm in dial-up position and we're at 1 or 2 seconds per day. Great amplitude, expected to go down with that adjustment to the lift angle. And the beat error is below 1 millisecond. This is just a great performance, and I'm satisfied with that. So we'll complete the build of the dial side here. Get the cannon pinion put back in. I'll need to push down a little bit on that since it's friction fit. And then we'll put a little D5 oil on the outside so that the hour wheel can run smoothly. I want to find a new crystal here to go back in our case. So we'll measure the diameter here and find something appropriate. So 45.1 millimeters. That's between a 20 and a 19. We'll try this one first. Might be a little bit big. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll try one size down. This is a linear 19 and 15/16, and that just goes in. Okay, well, the only challenge now is to remove that 100-year-old sticker that's been sitting on this new old stock dial, so I'll use some alcohol for that, and we'll let that soak for a little while. See if we can peel that off. Yeah, it's coming away. Let's turn our attention to this case. Do you see how it's dipped down here? That's not closing correctly on the back here, so I'm going to work that section a little bit here with my pegwood into this concave forming block here to see if we can get that straightened out a little bit. And I'll just correct that outer shape, just gently tapping this down back into shape. Oh, that's better. It's a bit of a sad story on these beautiful old cases. Unfortunately, these pocket watches are getting purchased for their gold content. Gold is so valuable these days, and they're getting stripped down and then melted. I did a short video article on that, so I'll put this up on the top right corner. You can check that out if you have an interest. But our interest here is to restore these pocket watches and hopefully extend their life another 100 years. So I'll polish this case up and bring it back to new. It's a very light flitz polish here. Now look at that. Why would anybody want to melt that down? Such a beautiful thing. Okay, and our mineral glass is ready to be returned into the bezel here and looking beautiful as well. I'm very pleased with that. Now we can finish off our pocket watch movement by putting the hour wheel back. dial washer as well. Now it's ready for the dial. Another great piece was that amazing patina. Not something that I wanted to try and clean off or replace. And that's my view on this. You might have a different view, but I just love the aging of this and the stories it has to tell. Can you imagine? It's oxidation, isn't it? On the dial there. Perhaps some moisture. And I decided on this second hand that we would use the donor movement. The other one was actually glued to that staff, which is not the right thing. And one last thing we need to do here is try and get this screw out of our spacer ring, and very fortunately after it went through the cleaner cycle I was able to work this out here with my modelling knife, so I didn't have to drill or do anything crazy to get that out. And we'll pick up another screw, replacement screw from the donor movement. There's a pair of screws here that go on the inside, and then another pair that go on the outside once we've put this movement back into the case. So we'll put that in from the front side here and line it up with the crown and stem. And we're getting close to the end here. Let's take one last look at the movement. Such a beautiful thing, isn't it? Magical mechanical marvel. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this restoration journey. Thank you for joining me, and I will leave you to enjoy this fine piece. Until next time.